Memory. It's the key to our identity.
Without memory, we're nothing.
It's who we are.
Memory hackers. Right now.
It seems that divine law forbids us from performing servile work on the Lord's day. The first day shall be the most solemn unto you, and holy. You shall do no servile work therein. Because of this command, Catholics pretty much always avoided unnecessary work on the Lord's day and holy days of obligation. Tertullian, an early church father, said, "On the day of the Lord's resurrection, we ought to guard not only against kneeling, but every posture and office of solicitude, deferring even our business, lest we give any place to the devil." This practice is affirmed by the Catholic Encyclopedia, which was written about 100 years ago, and it says, "These and similar indications show that during the first 3 centuries, practice and tradition had consecrated the Sunday to the public worship of God by the hearing of Mass and the resting from work." The Catholic Encyclopedia continues, "From the 8th century, the law began to be formulated as it exists at the present day, and the local councils forbade servile work, public buying and selling, pleading in the law courts, and the public and solemn taking of oaths." St. Thomas Aquinas said, "Two things are to be observed in the hallowing of the Sabbath. One of these is the end, and this is that man occupy himself with divine things, and the other thing is cessation from work." The Catechism of Trent, the most reliable of all catechisms, says of the Lord's Day, "Thou shalt do no work on it, says the Lord, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy beast, nor the stranger that is within the gates." The Catechism continues, "These words teach us, in the first place, to avoid whatever may interfere in the worship of God. Hence it is not difficult to perceive that all servile works are forbidden, not because they are improper or evil in themselves, but because they withdraw the attention from the worship of God, which is the great end of the commandment." Pope Pius IX said, "One of your aims should be to instill in the faithful a greater aversion for sins which scandalize others. Your priests should share the same. You are aware of the increase in the number of those who sin in a scandalous manner, including those who openly do servile work on holy days." The Church's unbroken practice was reflected in the Code of Canon Law of 1917. On feast days of precept, Mass is to be heard. There is abstinence from servile work, legal acts, and likewise, unless there is a special indult or legitimate customs provide otherwise, from public trade, shopping, and other public buying and selling. Some theologians, such as St. Alphonsus Liguori, posited that working a short duration on Sundays and holy days would be a venial sin, but once a person worked more than 2 or 2.5 hours, it became a mortal sin. Here's an article from 1904 that appeared in the Catholic Advance, the diocesan newspaper for the Wichita Diocese. It did an excellent job of describing the prohibition against servile works. "The obligation to rest from servile work on Sunday is binding under the pain of mortal sin. By servile work is meant such work as was done formerly before Christianity by the slaves among the Romans, such as digging, plowing, washing, the trades, etc. Also, civil, judicial, and commercial duties, such as trials, making contracts, buying and selling, etc. These are forbidden, even though the element of gain does not enter in. The consensus of theologians has judged that it is permissible to write correct proofs, copy music, to take photographs, to go on a journey, to sketch or paint for amusement. This does not mean to paint houses or fences, but it is permissible to cook, clean, and other minor household duties. Butchers and bakers may provide for the necessities of their customers. Farmers are permitted to labor to protect their crops from inclement weather. Also, those who work on railroads through public necessity. If custom favors it, barbers may shave and cut hair, and stores for eatables may be open for a while to accommodate the public. Now here's a question and answer from the same Catholic Advance that appeared in 1935, and it says basically the same thing that we just read that appeared in 1904. But then came the Second World War. Most industries manufactured items that contributed to the war effort, so suddenly it seemed that almost all work was considered necessary. Here's a portion of an article from the Catholic Advance, and it says, "Of course, if one must work on Sundays and holy days, he may do so, especially in these days when the nation is geared to an all-out effort in the production of war materials and weapons. Catholics working in war industrial plants are obliged to work on Sundays assigned to them. Here's an article that appeared in December of 1943 in the Catholic Advance. It says that there would be masses at 5:30 in the afternoon on Sundays and holy days of obligation, as long as employees in war industries were obliged to work on Sundays. So, servile work on Sundays and holy days of obligation was supposed to be a temporary thing. It would all end when the war ended. But here's an article from the Catholic Advance dated September of 1946. That was 1 year after the Second World War had ended. It addressed those who, it says, must work on Sundays, notably oil field workers. But the war was over. Where was the necessity? Well, by the time the war had ended, it seemed that once a worker was placed on a work schedule, it was considered to be necessary, regardless what the person did. So the genie was out of the bottle. And then came the Second Vatican Council. And the council only happened because it was enabled by the thinking that took place during the Second World War and its aftermath. And with the Vatican Council, it seemed as if everything went to hell. And here's some drivel from the Catholic Advance, that same newspaper that we've been reading here. And it once was a very noble publication, but it is now reduced to regurgitating claptrap. And the article says that what constitutes necessary servile labor is now a matter of conscience and personal judgment. Well, I hope you enjoyed this installment. We'll be back again in about a week with another one. But in the meantime, please check out my Facebook page, which is linked down below. Also, please check out the Ascent of Mount Carmel group, which is a Facebook study group for the Book of Ascent of Mount Carmel. That's also linked down below. And please pray for the church.
Hi ho, it's home from work we go.